The first man fell at sunrise. By midday, a dozen more followed. By nightfall, all 100 were gone. These were not soldiers felled by plague, nor victims of a crude poison. They were the finest men in Babylon, the strongest, the most beautiful, handpicked for what was believed to be an honor beyond measure, a single night with Queen Semiramis. They entered her chamber brimming with youth and strength. By morning, they staggered out as husks, their vitality stripped, collapsing into death within hours. The city's physicians were baffled, the palace thrown into chaos. Yet the queen herself remained untouched, calm, unshaken, the sole survivor of a night that devoured 100 lives. That night became the marrow of legend, a tale whispered for centuries. Was it sorcery? A rare poison? Or had the queen crossed some threshold into something no longer human and far more dangerous? In this account, we will follow 7 documented elements of her reign that reveal she was not merely a cruel ruler, but something much worse. We begin with the night of death and the changes that would terrify a city, corrupt a mother's love, and fracture the archaeological record itself. What happened within those walls? And why was it not madness, but months of cold preparation that birthed history's most calculated mass sacrifice? Picture Theon, a 19-year-old slave who believed fortune had smiled upon him. Personally chosen by the queen, whisked into the palace, bathed daily in fragrant imported oils, fed like a prince. For 3 months, he and 99 others lived in silken captivity, never knowing they were being readied, not for glory, but for slaughter. The cleansing was no kindness. It was a refinement of their blood for what modern occult scholars call a transformation rite. And one of them, by fate or by anomaly, would live long enough to tell what he saw. The selection began half a year before. Surviving palace tablets detailed the requirements. Young men aged 16 to 22, of perfect form, untouched by lust, and bearing what was called spiritual purity. Inspectors combed slave markets across the empire, noting height, teeth, and even birthmarks. All had to be orphans, souls without kin, without ties to pull them back from the grave. For 3 months, they were housed in a secluded wing, bound to a rigid diet. No meat, only sacred grains and herbs laced with mild mind-altering plants. Their bodies were washed in Egyptian oils, their lungs filled daily with Arabian incense. They learned letters, music, and the art of obedience. They were encouraged to write home, praising their queen. Some of those clay letters survive, words of joy, of gratitude, of blind faith, unaware they were signing their own epitaphs. Her chamber was remade for the rite over many weeks. Obsidian tiles from far-off volcanoes lined the floor, each etched with symbols that averted the gaze. Walls bore inscriptions older than known writing. Where her bed once stood, a slab of black granite was placed, the altar. The craftsmen who built it never left. Their bodies were found bricked into the walls, poisoned to ensure silence. On the moonless spring equinox, the work began. At sunset, the first youth was brought in. The survivor's account, preserved in hidden temple archives, claims each life was ended in exactly 6 minutes. The queen's words were not of any human tongue, and the victims, glass-eyed and exultant, stepped forward willingly, convinced they were ascending to the realm of the divine. Theon lived because the paralytic poison, drawn from a now-lost Mesopotamian plant, could not bind him. A rare quirk in his blood rendered it harmless. But the poison was not the true instrument of death. That part, he said, was worse. He lay still among the dead, watching the queen's body shift in ways the human frame should not. By the 20th offering, she no longer moved like a woman. The chamber's heat drained away until frost crusted the tiles. Shadows broke free of their masters, stretching into winged forms. The victim's blood ran uphill to the altar, drawing patterns with a mind of its own. By the 50th, Those outside heard voices, not one, not human, resonating through the stone. At dawn, the guards entered. The sight broke the courage of battle-hardened men. 99 corpses spiraled outward from the queen, who sat in the center, transformed. Her body moved with the wrong sort of fluidity, her eyes catching light like a predator's, her voice ringing with impossible harmonics. In Mesopotamian belief, blood was Napishtu, the essence of life. To drink it pure was to bridge the gap between mortal and divine. Variations of this rite appear in Aztec, Celtic, and Egyptian records, but none on such a scale. And if the survivor's account is true, this was not superstition, but an engineered ritual timed to perfection. New moon for hidden wisdom, equinox for the balance of realms, and victims of unbroken vitality untethered to the living. By every account, it succeeded. And that is the horror. Not whether it happened, but that power could corrupt so completely as to make it inevitable. Babylon, in 810 BCE, was the axis of the world. Its ruler was told daily she was a living god. Surrounded by knowledge as old as civilization itself, the thought of becoming truly divine may not have seemed mad at all. The greater madness was that everyone around her allowed it. Guards, priests, servants, all obeyed, because when your queen says she needs 100 lives, you start counting. But after that night, she was no longer what she had been. The transformation had worked, though not as any mortal mind had imagined. The records that follow are unanimous. She ceased to eat mortal food. Her gaze became painful to endure, like staring into the heart of the sun. The air around her twisted. Shadows moved in, defiance of light. She spoke in tongues older than mankind, holding court with unseen guests. And most chilling of all, she could bend human will with her voice alone. Imagine a ruler whose voice could slip past thought straight into the machinery of your body, turning you into a puppet with a single word. That was Semiramis. No surprise then that soon the entire city began to show symptoms of what modern medicine might call mass psychogenic illness, though the evidence suggests it was anything but imagined. Multiple witnesses recorded the changes. Court physician Nabu Sharma, whose notes survive on hardened clay tablets, described the impossible, her skin emitting a faint glow in darkness, her motions becoming almost liquid, her head able to rotate like that of a hunting owl. Time itself seemed to abandon her. Not only had her aging halted, but she appeared younger than before the rite. She was not unique in history. Ancient records point to Pharaoh Amenhotep IV, Maya Najaz, even certain Chinese emperors who underwent blood rituals and emerged with the same eerie alterations. Yet in Babylon, her most terrifying gift was the voice of command. It began subtly. A guard, refusing to open the treasury, heard her utter a single, sharp syllable and unlock the gates against his will. A priest, determined to keep sacred scrolls hidden, found his hands delivering them to her without thought. A scribe attempting to record her crimes instead wrote hymns in her honor, his stylus moving as if possessed. The compulsion was not just mental, but physical. Eyewitnesses spoke of their own limbs obeying her in elaborate motions, while their minds shrieked in silent revolt. Shadows, too, grew strange. They moved against light, retained form in complete darkness, and, in some cases, hunted. One servant who dared to curse the queen was throttled by a shadow hand emerging from a wall. Other shadows stood sentinel outside her chambers when no guards were present. The palace astronomer trying to study them went mad. He claimed the darkness had depth, and that when he gazed into it, something vast and intelligent stared back. Her diet transformed entirely. She touched no food prepared in the kitchens, yet showed no sign of wasting away. Instead, once each month, A feeding rite took place behind locked doors. Only a handful of priests were permitted to watch, each sworn to eternal silence. Those who spoke of it were found shriveled and dry, their bodies bearing the marks of accelerated aging, as though something had drunk the years from their flesh. The language she now spoke was older than humanity. Scribes attempting to transcribe it suffered nosebleeds and cramps in their hands. The letters themselves felt like wounds on the page. The sounds spanned beyond human hearing, and modern analysis of fragments shows structure, a language, not a trance. Priests claimed she conversed with the gods. Others whispered she spoke to beings older. Still foreign ambassadors documented stranger changes. Servants moved with uncanny synchrony, turning corners at identical angles, blinking in unison, losing all individuality. One Elamite envoy compared the palace to a hive, each person merely a limb of the queen's mind. Yet the servants themselves swore nothing was amiss. Ancient belief held that the gods lived on sacrifice and prayer. By taking 100 souls at once, Semiramis had not just mimicked them. She had become something akin to them. Within her palace, she was a local deity, untouchable. But divinity did not sit cleanly in mortal flesh. Like a flawed machine, her new nature clashed with her body, leaving her something incomplete and unstable. History offers parallels. Moctezuma II of the Aztecs, Shang emperors who claimed command of the dead, an Egyptian ruler said to speak to the gods after 77 ritual deaths. Archaeology supports such tales. Mass graves arranged with purpose, palaces rebuilt for unknown functions, rulers depicted with features not entirely human. For a monarch, this was the ultimate weapon. No rebellion against a voice that controls your muscles. No invasion against a sovereign who commands shadows and converses in the speech of gods. Whether her transformation was genuine or the most brilliant illusion ever staged, it made her unassailable. But power like this warps quickly. Palace records hint at later rites that made the Equinox massacre look modest. What was once horror became routine. Servants matter-of-factly noting that a feeding would occur that evening, as though scheduling a feast. And then, the price. When a ruler takes divinity by force, it is rarely the ruler alone who pays. The city itself began to sicken. This was no plague of the body. It was deeper. The first to sense it were the animals. They fled in droves, not just pets or herds, but birds, insects, even the rats in the granaries. Archaeological digs confirmed the sudden collapse of the livestock markets. Within a fortnight, there was nothing left to sell. Witnesses spoke of sacred cattle bursting through temple gates, of mice streaming out of the city in ordered lines. Those that could not escape, the old, the trapped, died within days. Not of hunger or disease, but of something the old veterinary texts call spiritual exhaustion. They simply stopped being alive. Then came the plants. Death radiated outward from the queen's chamber in flawless concentric rings, starting with the palace gardens. Each day the ring widened exactly 13 cubits. Even the great Euphrates itself rebelled. For 3 days, its waters flowed in reverse. And then, the apparitions began. Citizens spoke of young men, the 100 Lost Tour, appearing in doorways, slipping through walls, their throats forever cut, their eyes fixed on the living. Plants did not wither in the way nature intended. They didn't brown, curl, and fall. They disintegrated into ash while still, rooted in the earth. The Royal Botanical Archive, maintained without interruption for generations, records the extinction of species that had flourished in Babylon since its birth. Ancient date palms that had outlived droughts and floods crumbled to powder in a single night. The famed Hanging Gardens, pride of the empire and wonder of the world, became nothing but tiered cascades of gray dust within weeks. Then came the river's rebellion. For 3 days after the first wave of plant deaths, the Euphrates flowed backwards with a strength that flipped fishing boats and shattered docks. But the change was not only in direction. The water turned thick, almost oily, black as pitch, and so cold it burned the skin. Fish floated to the surface in their thousands, rotting before they had time to be gutted. When the current finally resumed its natural course, it carried horrors, stones that muttered in whispers, river weeds with eyes, and fish with more mouths than could be counted. The dead men began appearing almost immediately. At first, only those who had played a role in the ritual preparation saw them. A guard who had marched the chosen victims into the queen's chamber glimpsed pale, slit-throated figures lurking at the edge of his vision. A servant who had mixed the sacred oils found them standing in her kitchen, unmoving, watching. And then it spread. People with no connection to the palace began reporting the same figures, always the same 100, always marked by the wounds that killed them, always silent yet heavy with accusation. Children drew them before their parents saw them. The locations matched the spiral of death in the ritual chamber. The first apparition appearing where the first victim had fallen, the second where the second had died. The pattern slowly unfurling across the city until a perfect ghostly spiral encircled Babylon. The living began to walk with heads lowered, unable to bear the sense of being observed by something that had no right to exist. No one slept easily. Thousands reported identical dreams. A black chamber, a circle of young men with open throats, the dreamer bound in place as something vast and unseen moved closer. Children woke screaming at precisely 3:33 a.m. every night, naming the broken boys. Adults stopped sleeping altogether rather than risk the visions. The nightmares alone could have destroyed the city, but then came the manifestations. Objects shifted of their own accord, tracing the spiral of the queen's original steps. Air froze solid in patches, so cold it turned water to ice in seconds under the desert sun. Fires sparked spontaneously in the homes of those who had touched the ritual preparations. None of it was random. Each disturbance was a mirror of the sacrifice. Cold spots where the victims had lain, fires where the oils had been stored, moving objects along the exact path the queen had walked. Mesopotamian priests had warned for centuries. A badly executed rite could tear the skin between worlds, the Barzakh, allowing the spirit realm to seep through. This sacrifice had not merely altered the queen, it had ripped the city open. Other cultures had similar warnings. The Greek miasma, the Chinese Shaki, the Celtic thin places. But Babylon was no thin place. It was a wound that bled into reality. The soil from that era still shows anomalies, mineral traces consistent with electromagnetic events far beyond nature. The geometry of the plant death rings, the precision of the animal exodus, the ordered spread of apparitions, all suggested a guiding, intelligent force. Skeptics have blamed ergot poisoning or toxins, but poisons cannot reverse rivers, cannot leave carbon signatures in perfect circles, cannot send entire ecosystems into collapse. And the city's decline wasn't only supernatural. Trade stopped. Diplomats warned their rulers of a cursed capital where the dead walked and shadows had will. Merchants refused to enter. The economy starved. Rival kingdoms saw the weakness. A city where animals fled, crops turned to dust, and its queen ruled from a palace haunted by her own victims, was a city waiting to be taken. But first, someone had to address the source. In the modern world, if Washington, London, or Tokyo experienced this, the headlines would scream. In Babylon, it simply became life. The ghost of Victim 73 might be in your kitchen. The river might run black, and you might dream of the same slaughter as your neighbor. People stayed, either too loyal or too afraid to leave. Yet the greatest horror was not the plague or the famine or the apparitions. It was the reason behind them. Because Semiramis had not sought transformation out of vanity or curiosity. She had done it for love, for her son, Adad-nirari III. When King Shamshi-Adad died, the boy was only 10. In the ancient world, a child king was an open invitation for invasion. Enemies gathered on the borders, nobles whispered of replacing him, and foreign courts waited to divide Babylon. Any other mother might have bargained, or fled, or raised an army. Semiramis chose to become something no man or god would dare challenge. The political crisis was a snare tightening with every sunrise. 3 generals declared themselves the rightful heir. The Elamites massed on the eastern frontier. In the palace itself, 7 assassination attempts were recorded in the boy's first month. The council debated replacing him with an adult claimant. The priests argued that a child could not perform the sacred duties of kingship, and without divine legitimacy, the gods would abandon the throne entirely. In a world where disasters were blamed on cosmic disapproval, this was dangerous beyond measure. Semiramis weighed her options: flee to Egypt, and her son would be branded a coward for life; led armies herself, and she risked immediate rebellion; negotiate, and she would hand away her son's authority piece by piece. In the restricted vaults of the royal library, she found another path. Ancient tablets spoke of rulers who had stepped beyond humanity, queens who commanded death, kings who could not be killed. The cost was unbearable, but the power unmatched. She planned with a patience that made modern killers seem reckless. Sorcerers from the east, priests from Egypt, shamans from the northern steppes. Each gave her fragments of a ritual that, once assembled, promised immortality and dominion. And she tested it. Palace accounts hint at smaller sacrifices, single victims used to refine the formula. She measured the blood, adjusted the chance, eliminated theatrics in favor of what produced results. By the time she gathered the 100, she knew exactly what the outcome would be. The last weeks before the Equinox Massacre were spent with her son. She taught him the art of kingship, played games with him, told him the stories of great rulers. She had portraits made of them together. She selected his advisors, arranged political betrothals, and left him letters for birthdays yet to come. One tablet survives with her own words, carved deep into the clay. "Everything I do so you may live and rule in peace." She gave him her love. She gave him her future. And then she gave Babylon its curse. The mental split required to be a doting mother by daylight and a calculating butcher by night speaks to a mind that could lock away empathy like a prisoner. Her transformation brought protection swiftly and without question. Within mere days of the equinox rite, her son's enemies scattered. The 3 generals vying for the throne melted away, one fleeing to the far edges of the known world, one vanishing into a monastery. The 3rd found lifeless in a manner so strange it could only be called supernatural. The Elamite armies dissolved without battle. Their ruler claimed a god had warned him in his dreams. Even the nobles who had plotted against young Adad-nirari turned suddenly loyal. Some came forward to confess crimes no one had accused them of, weeping for pardon. Others disappeared entirely, leaving behind letters of repentance. The message was unmistakable. To threaten the queen's child was to invite something worse than death. From the boy's perspective, the change in his mother must have been terror given form. In writings from his later years, he recalled, "The dark time when my mother's face was no longer her own." He admitted to fearing her gaze, hearing unseen voices when she spoke, and shivering in her presence, even in the height of summer. Yet alongside this fear came an understanding, perhaps even approval. One surviving tablet reads, "My mother surrendered her soul so I might keep mine. I sit the throne because she dared to become what others could not face." In the Near Eastern world, a mother's duty to protect her children outranked almost every other obligation, but the expectation extended beyond mere safety. It demanded securing the child's future, whatever the cost. Legends praised mothers who sold themselves into bondage to feed their young, who struck down threats without hesitation, who bargained with spirits for their children's fortunes. These were not tales of shame. They were models to follow. By that measure, Semiramis's metamorphosis was the ultimate maternal offering. She sacrificed not only her life, but her humanity. The logic was as clean as it was horrifying. If power keeps danger at bay, absolute power destroys it. If fear deters threats, divine fear obliterates them. If sacrifice buys the gods' favor, the ultimate sacrifice buys the gods themselves. This thinking is not unique to her. Across history, parents have committed unthinkable acts for the children. She merely had the will and the means to take the idea to its furthest, most monstrous conclusion. And the precedent she set spread like infection. Egyptian queen mothers sought blood rights. Chinese empresses whispered with forbidden spirits. Roman rumor mills spoke of imperial mothers dabbling in shadowed arts to secure their sons' reigns. Most failed. They lacked her precision. Their attempts ended in their own deaths, or in half-formed horrors. Women warped into mindless beasts, children left unprotected. Semiramis had opened a door that others could not close. Modern parental excess might look like overscheduling lessons or bribing a school official. Semiramis rewrote the definition. My mother ate 100 souls and speaks the speech of things older than gods. The truly chilling part is that in her mind, this was love. Every life she took was, to her, a shield for her son. And how do you fight such a thing? How do you defeat someone whose atrocities are powered by devotion? The priesthood of Babylon would soon try, not merely to depose a queen, but to judge a being who had crossed the threshold of divinity. The high court of the great Ziggurat was never meant for such a case. It was political heresy. It was cosmic suicide. Arresting a ruler who could command minds with a syllable, whose shadow was a living army, whose court was haunted by 100 loyal dead. The fact they even attempted it shows how desperate the city had become. Babylon was collapsing. The temples of other gods were plagued by disturbances that traced back to her palace. The high priest of Marduk finally proclaimed what few dared to voice. She was not a goddess. She was an abomination, a rupture in the cosmic balance itself. Building a case meant more than law. It meant theology. It meant war. The preparation was a secret alliance months in the making. Every major Mesopotamian temple sent representatives, Marduk, Ishtar, Shamash, and lesser cults alike. Foreign priesthoods were smuggled in, Egyptian scribes of Thoth, Hittite storm priests, shadowed mystics from the Indus. Face-to-face councils were impossible. Even being in her presence risked subjugation. Instead, they met in dreams, binding their minds together through shared trances. Beneath her notice, a second government of faith and magic took shape. The survivor of the ritual was hidden deep within a temple vault. His testimony, etched across 17 tablets, laid bare the transformation in harrowing detail. Evidence was gathered: the crystallized blood spirals from her chamber, ash from the dead gardens, vials of the black Euphrates water. They even collected proof from beyond the physical. Diviners charted fractures in the spiritual fabric, oracle bones cracked into accusations, sacred flames burning in colors reserved for cosmic crimes. Reality itself was called to testify. The summons exploited her only known weakness, her son. The priests arranged for young Adad-nirari to request her presence at a religious ceremony under the guise of seeking her blessing for a diplomatic marriage. Around the ziggurat, they built an invisible cage, meteoric iron engraved with binding sigils, salt drawn from the primordial seas, and blood from willing martyrs. When she stepped into the sacred court, the air changed. Heat vanished in a heartbeat. Shadows tore themselves from the walls. At her first words, 7 priests collapsed, blood pouring from nose and ear. Her voice splintered pottery and ended pregnancies miles away. But the assembly had prepared a counterstrike. They answered in one voice, weaving a harmony that bent her power back on itself. The temple's floors were carved with holy geometry, trapping her in a lattice of her own energy. From that moment, it was less a trial than a duel, a legal argument fought with the weapons of gods. Witnesses swore the idol of Marduk wept streams of blood. The holy flames of Shamash turned black and cold. And then the apparition no one expected. The shade of King Shamshi-Adad himself, Semiramis's husband, materialized to speak against her. His voice, echoing through the ziggurat, recounted her descent into monstrosity, the rupture she had carved into the cosmic balance. Then came the 100, the boys she had slaughtered, manifesting together for the first time. They filled the sacred hall, silent, unmoving, the wound in their throats speaking more clearly than any human tongue. For the first time since her metamorphosis, Semiramis faltered. The judges had to invent a new branch of law to proceed. Normal crimes assumed mortal defendants. This trial required charges like theft of souls, corruption of reality, assault upon the divine order. They debated whether a being who had stepped partially into godhood could be held to mortal law, or if allowing divinity to excuse atrocity would invite others to attempt the same path. After 3 days of deliberation, they passed a sentence beyond ordinary death. They decreed total erasure, not just her body, but her memory, her soul, and the possibility of rebirth. 7 flames would be summoned, each from a different god. Shamash's purifying fire, Gibel's devouring flame, Anu's celestial blaze, and others too sacred to name. Each was meant to burn away a different layer of her existence. The execution was designed to be a spectacle. It would remind Babylon, and every ruler in the known world, that even those who claimed the mantle of gods could face justice. On the appointed day, thousands gathered in the great courtyard. Priests built the pyre from 7 species of consecrated wood, each grown for centuries in temple groves and watered only with holy water. Cedar from Lebanon for cleansing, sandalwood from India for spirit binding, olive wood steeped in sacred oil for judgment. The logs were arranged to mirror the constellations as they had appeared on the night of her ritual. The oils that anointed the pyre were more than blessed. They were alchemical works of devotion. Virgin priestesses had brewed them for months, water from 7 sacred rivers, blood freely given, and the tears of those who had lost children. The wards that held her were straining, even before the fire was lit. 3 priests died on the spot holding the bindings in place. Others aged decades in moments. In the end, it was her son who sealed her fate. Adad-nirari spoke the final binding words, for only the child for whom she had damned herself could fully renounce her. Witnesses swore she smiled at him, even as chains of divine light locked around her form. The fire burned for 3 days and nights without pause. Its heat warped stone walls 50 feet away, yet the priests within the circle of wards stood untouched. Shapes flickered within the flames, the faces of the 100 victims, alien landscapes, things older than the gods themselves. Her screams were not human. They were harmonic weapons. Birds fell dead mid-flight, pregnant women miscarried, and strong men collapsed, bleeding from the ears. Worse still, her cries carried meaning. Curses hurled into the minds of all who heard them, prophecies that drove some to madness. When the last flame guttered out, the priests approached to scatter her ashes and recoiled. There was no ash, only bones, black as obsidian, clear as diamond, warm as living flesh. They whispered directly into the thoughts of anyone nearby. When cut, they bled crystalline shards, and they were growing. Disposal became a nightmare. Cast into the Euphrates, they washed back ashore against the current. Buried, they caused the earth to quake and bleed. Broken apart, the pieces crawled together. Ground to powder, every grain became a perfect replica of the whole. They were not remains, they were seeds. It was the foreign priests who offered the only viable solution: containment, not destruction. 7 containers of meteoric iron were forged, each etched inside and out with protections from a different faith. The bones were divided, sealed, and hidden apart from one another, so no fragment could call to the others. The seals were never meant to last forever, only until a way to truly end her could be found. That was 2,800 years ago. It has never been found. By taking 100 lives into herself, Semiramis had become a distributed being, impossible to kill by striking at any single form. She had not created a goddess. She had created something that existed outside life and death, a parasite on reality itself. Fire had not purified her. It had stripped away her human mask. The pattern appears elsewhere in history. Egyptian hymns to pharaohs who ate the flesh of gods and could not be slain. Chinese legends of emperors made immortal by mass sacrifice, trapped for eternity in their own bodies. Greek tales of chained titans, still conscious after ages of binding. And if the priests' accounts are true, the bones are still out there, sleeping, whispering, waiting. Because you cannot kill what has stepped beyond death, you can only hope it never wakes. These kinds of stories always end the same way, with the unkillable thing not destroyed, only chained, waiting for someone foolish enough to free it. The implications stretch far beyond legend. If a will twisted enough can step past death entirely, what does that mean for justice, punishment, or the balance of the cosmos? The execution of Semiramis proved something grim. Some transformations can't be undone. Some crimes echo longer than any sentence. The priests had won a trial, but lost the war. They had removed the immediate danger, but in doing so, created a permanent wound. 7 temples became 7 prisons, watched without pause, each guarding something that should not exist, but undeniably did. We complain when a modern villain isn't written out of a story properly. These people quite literally could not kill theirs, even with divine fire. Imagine the conversation after the flames went cold. So, the God Queen we just burned? Now she's a set of sentient crystal bones that whisper prophecy. Meeting adjourned. Suddenly, our complaints about repeat offenders in modern courts feel quaint. At least our executions don't leave behind artifacts that demand eternal guarding. And here is the truly unsettling part. Those crystallized remains are still out there. 7 temples became museums. Museums became ruins. Ruins became unknown, which means that somewhere in our world today, pieces of Queen Semiramis sit in the dark. Still warm, still growing, still whispering to anyone who listens. And here's where the line between myth and history blurs uncomfortably. Because everything I've told you has roots in documented fact. Semiramis was not just a story. She was real, known to history as Shahmuramat. Archaeology confirms it. Stone, tablets, and inscriptions tell of a woman who held unprecedented power in Assyria around 810 BCE. A regent, a general, a breaker of rules who made historians uneasy, even millennia later. Where the human record ends, the legend begins. But the transition is unnervingly seamless. Shahmuramat's reign matches the Semiramis legend year for year. Both ruled for a son named Adad-nirari III. Both faced the kind of succession crisis that crushes kingdoms. Both commanded fanatical loyalty from their people and terror from their enemies. Victorian archaeologists uncovered her stela in ancient Kalhu and recoiled at her titles. Queen of the universe, she who speaks for the gods, mother of kings, destroyer of enemies. Not ceremonial, but confirmed by foreign records. The stela had been deliberately defaced, not by rivals, but by later Assyrian rulers, erasing certain achievements and replacing them with hollow prayers. Someone, centuries later, wanted key parts of her story gone. The historical Shawmuramat shattered every rule of her era, leading armies from the front, negotiating treaties in her own name, appointing governors without male approval. Foreign inscriptions called her the witch queen whose voice unmakes courage. Religious texts hint at her entering forbidden sanctuaries, performing rites meant only for kings, and claiming direct conversation with the gods. And the archaeological record has darker hints. In 1962, an Iraqi dig unearthed a mass grave from exactly her era. 90 to 100 young male skeletons, aged 16 to 25, laid in a spiral. All faced inward toward a central point in the soil that tested chemically abnormal. The dig was abruptly closed, the site sealed, the report never published. Other fragments, some surfacing briefly in private collections, describe the ritual of 100 gates and a queen who ate the sun and spoke with voices of shadow. These were not official records, but personal writings, terrified scribes trying to explain what they had seen. The language slips between Akkadian and something older than known script. Greek and Roman historians, writing centuries later, relay details that do not appear in standard myth. The precise number of victims, the spiral, the crystalline remains. Either they all drew from a single fabrication, or they were passing on a shared, consistent account of real events. Modern finds only deepen the unease. In 2011, a site in Syria revealed walls covered in the same pre-writing symbols tied to the legend, destroyed by war before they could be studied. In 2019, radar scans at Nimrud detected a sealed chamber beneath the palace, matching ancient descriptions of the transformation room. Political chaos has kept it sealed. It's as if history itself resists letting the full truth surface. The usual explanation, that male chroniclers demonized powerful women, doesn't fit here. Semiramis is not reduced in her legend. She is amplified. She is not punished for her power. She transcends mortality through it. The myth doesn't erase her deeds. It magnifies them into the inhuman, which leaves the darker possibility. The supernatural elements are not flourishes, but attempts to describe an event too alien for human language. Myths as crime reports. Allegory as the only way to speak of something unbearable. And if that's true, then the 7 containers were not symbols in a story. They are artifacts, still here, still waiting. Semiramis remains the perfect storm. Maternal devotion sharpened into obsession, fused with absolute authority, armed with knowledge mortals were never meant to use. The 100 young men who thought they had been chosen for honor became fuel. Theron, the lone survivor, spent his life trying to warn others. He died raving and alone, his testimony buried in temple vaults. Her logic worked. Her son lived and reigned to old age. In her mind, every death, every curse, every horror was justified. The mathematics of monstrosity. One throne bought with 100 lives. A city condemned for a single boy's safety. What does her story reveal about us? That with enough power and motive, anyone can excuse anything. That even the purest human emotion, a mother's love, can warp into something unrecognizable. That civilization always walks a thin line above the abyss. We like to think we've evolved, but give someone absolute power, threaten their child, and watch how quickly morality turns to ash. The only difference between us and her may be that we've lost the knowledge to make soul-consuming rituals work. And if you find yourself thinking, I understand why she did it, be afraid, because that's where the path begins. So tonight, when you lie in bed, safe, unoffered to a dark altar, be grateful that your leaders can't feed on you for power. that your mother's love expresses itself in awkward photos, not citywide curses. And pray the old gods stay dead. Because somewhere in the dark, 7 shards of crystal bone still breathe in a language older than humanity. Every myth was someone's truth. Sleep well